To the outside world, it seemed that Lynette Dawson had it all, but in fact her marriage to Chris was in trouble. What we now know is that on the evening of January 8, 1982, Chris and Lynette were at home here in Bayview on Sydney's northern beaches. We know she was alive about 9:30 p.m. that night because she speaks to her mum on the phone. After that, nothing. In the 31 years since, she's never contacted a single member of her family, nor any of her many friends.
Real Crime Profile is brought to you by many wonderful sponsors such as ZipRecruiter, Madison Reed Hair Color, Quip Toothbrush, and Man Crates. We are so thankful to have their support and so happy whenever they have a special offer just for our Real Crime Profile listeners. So please, when you hear one of these special opportunities to try a new fantastic service or product, do go over and check them out. We can't do our show without you, and we certainly cannot do it without the companies who make our show possible. You can find the most recent sponsor offer in our show notes, on our Facebook page, and on our website, realcrimeprofile.com. Thanks so much, and thanks for listening to Real Crime Profile.
They were lied to. They were told that she was a fake mother. That's the cruelest part of this whole thing. Sorry. I know she loved them because I saw it.
Hello and welcome to Real Crime Profile. This is Jim Clemente, retired FBI profiler, former New York City prosecutor, and writer-producer on CBS's Criminal Minds. And with me today is...
Laura Richards, criminal behavioural analyst, former New Scotland Yard, and founder of Paladin National Stalking Advocacy Service.
And I am Lisa Zambetti, casting director for the time being of Criminal Minds.
Oh, come on. We have a whole season ahead of us.
I know, I'm depressed.
We have our very own final season.
Yes.
Season 15.
Season 15.
That we're in the middle of writing right now, and we'll be producing shortly.
We have Jim's episode coming up. Jim and Bobby Chacon, my beautiful Bobby baby, have written an episode, and I can't wait to get my hands on that and cast the shit out of it.
Well, I hope you're talking about the episode and not Bobby, because I think Bobby's beautiful wife would probably have an issue with that.
Anyway, so here we are, guys. We are in it with Teacher's Pet. We've had an enormous amount of reaction to our coverage of the Teacher's Pet podcast. And Laura, do you want to jump in here?
Yeah, I mean, we've had a huge amount of interaction from our listeners. So thank you so much, both on Facebook, on Twitter, and also on Instagram. And I know so many of you, this case really does resonate. We've had a lot of emails from the family as well. And Lynn's family is fairly extensive. And they've been incredibly helpful in just clarifying a couple of points. So I think it would be good if I just make reference to those points. One was, and it was something that I said of Lynn's date of birth. I think I got the month and the date wrong. So her date of birth was the 25th of September, 1948. There was also a couple of messages from the eldest brother of Lynette's, from Philip, and it was his daughter. So that makes her Lynn's niece, if I'm getting that right, Elisa Thomas, née Sims, who messaged us to say that not much is written about her father because Greg and Pat have sort of been leading the overt charge around getting justice for Lynn. But Philip, has been active in the background. He still works, and he's in his 70s. And she just wanted to let us know that he has also been a key part, although he didn't really want to be in the media and didn't want to do interviews. And that it was actually Greg, the youngest brother, who lived in Aberdeen when Lynn went missing. So he was, I believe, doing his police training at the time. So that part she put me right on. And we've also had messages from David Jenkins, who is Pat Jenkins' son. So the family structure, and I think Hedley Thomas had quite a good family tree, but I noticed he didn't have Philip on there either. So Philip was the eldest son, then I believe it was Pat Jenkins, then Lynette, and then Greg was the youngest. And it was Greg who was training to be a police officer. So David Jenkins has sent several messages just saying that he appreciates how sensitive we were about covering Lynn's case and how we did get a sense of who she was, and he was very appreciative of that.
It's great to know that she had such a tight and close and loving family, that even all these years later, they're still very committed to trying to get justice for her, and that's a wonderful thing. And it's one of the reasons why we do this podcast, because we want to try to help find justice for victims, and we always attempt to, give them their voice back when it's been taken from them.
And it's worth noting that, just because we can't find, something in our research that we do on the internet doesn't mean that there aren't family members that are there and involved. I mean, just because, the pictures that I found of Lynn as a young girl didn't have Philip, they didn't happen to have Philip in them, but that doesn't mean that there isn't a great extended family desperately trying to find out what happened to her. So it's just, the internet can only go so far.
That's right. And some people don't want to be in the foreground. And I think it was another important point that Renee Sims, Greg's daughter, emailed us about, which was at the time, Jim, that in terms of reporting someone missing, it had to be the next of kin. Therefore, right. It had to be Chris Dawson. And so although the family were trying to speak to police, it had to be Chris who made the formal report. Now, that was an interesting point to me. And, very concerning, actually, that only the next of kin can report someone missing. Because what if it is that next of kin who has disappeared the person?
Right. But next of kin, typically, it includes mother, father, brother, sister, daughter, son. So I don't know why they wouldn't let anybody else in the family make that report. They should have been able to make that report.
Well, apparently not, according to the family. And, Renee also just wanted to share with us the fact that her father was a sergeant in the police, and that he worked locally, and the police were very authoritarian in terms of the rank structure, and therefore he wasn't in a position to challenge his bosses. And although he did ask questions, he was sort of, constrained within the ways that he could do that. So she just wanted to make that very clear, that policing back in, the 80s, in particular in New South Wales, the rank structure was significant, the hierarchy. And he wasn't able to go over his boss's heads. And of course, we know that can be very career limiting, but it wasn't because he didn't care and he wasn't asking questions.
Yeah. All right. Well, it must be an anomaly in their law that prevents them from doing that. But, I could see them saying, if a family member reported her missing and not her husband, I could see them saying, well, we need to interview him to fill out this report. That's one thing. But to say that, they can't come in and actually make a report, it's just, obviously, as you pointed out, Laura, well, that gives any husband or wife, for that matter, I suppose, the ability to get rid of their spouse, and it's never going to be reported.
Right. And of course, he didn't report for a significant period of time. Now, we also had a message from Robin Courtney, who went to school with Lynn. So she knew her at the age of 16. And I thought I'd share what she said, because I have read this a couple of times, actually. She said that Lynn was a very sweet girl, but she wasn't timid. She knew her own mind and, was strong in her own mind. And that she was fun-loving and confident in her own abilities, and that she came from a very loving family and always saw the best in everybody. Mm-hmm. And she felt that Chris exploited her sort of gentleness. And that gentleness, she says, lives on in her daughters. But that's come up a few times, that actually Lynn wasn't, meek and mild. She had a vitality about her and a great sense of humor. And when she first met Chris Dawson, she did have a strong mind. But what we hear about is how that confidence and how her self-esteem is eroded over that 17-year partnership with Chris Dawson, which is all about coercive control, him wearing her down. And so towards the end, she didn't have that vitality and good sense of humor and, knowing her own mind. She was very much controlled by, from what I have read, by him in every sense, including financially.
Yeah, well, that's very much exhibited in her statement to her mother, I believe. My husband made me this very lovely drink when she wasn't really a drinker, right? But she also said that to, I think, one of her friends or to a dressmaker, I can't remember exactly at this point, but, when he hurt her, when he bruised her, that she must have done something to set him off, taking the blame on herself. And we see that all the time, right? With victims, Laura, we see that they actually, even though they are absolutely the victim, they are absolutely the aggrieved party, they feel like it's their fault. I must have goaded Chris when she was bruised. I must have said or done something wrong. Now, those are terrible statements because they reveal how controlled she was, that she bought into this. And instead of being able to be confident and, as you said, knowing herself, she obviously questioned herself. He wouldn't have done this unless I did something wrong, which we know now is absolutely false.
Right. So I think there's something about, understanding what her friends said about, Lynette when she was 16, when she was young, and, that's when she met Chris. But we have to remember she was with him for her whole life course from 16 onwards, to 33. And of course, her personality and her joie de vivre did get eroded, and it changed over time with people enforcing that. And I think one of the key people we should look at and listen to in terms of statements and the diary entries is Helena, her mother, who she was close to. And maybe we'll return to what Helena was saying in terms of her police statement, seeing as in our last episode, our listeners will recall that we covered Chris Dawson's statement, or what he called the antecedent report. Well, actually, Helena, Mum, wrote a statement 5 days later, which is in direct and stark contrast to Chris's statement. Mm-hmm. And our listeners have reacted, well to the fact that we talked through, line by line what Chris's statement was. So I think it would be very helpful if we go through Helena's
Sure.
at some point, as well as her diary entries. But we also had another message just picking up on something that we said in the last episode on Twitter, which was in reference to, you'll recall that Lynn disappeared, or she wasn't ever seen on January the 9th, I should say. So we know that she was alive on January the 8th because you'll recall that phone call that she had with her mother, that Chris was quite guarded against letting her speak, but Helena said that she seemed quite sozzled, and it was on January the 9th at 7 a.m. that Chris Dawson claims, and it's his account, that he took her to the bus stop in DY. And I think, Jim, you had mentioned, it was early, and therefore I think you said something like there weren't that many people about probably to see whether that happened or not.
Right. I think what I had said was, I think that the time was chosen specifically because at that time on a Saturday morning, it wouldn't be that unusual for Chris to be able to say, yeah, I was at the bus stop, and there weren't a lot of people around to say, well, I was there and I didn't see you, or I didn't see Lynn. So he just picked the time that was convenient for him. That was sort of a forensic countermeasure in my mind. Now, it may be that on Saturday mornings at this particular place, everybody takes that bus to go to the beach or the baths or whatever they want to call it. And, if that's the case, if one of our listeners can fill us in on that, then that's an interesting fact to know. But if that were the case, that there were a lot of people there, then it could also be that he thought that the fact that they didn't show up, that they weren't there, would be missed because there was such a crowd. But I'm voting now that, and especially based on what we know of Lynn, that that the night before she was half sozzled, as her mother said, and that she probably wouldn't have gotten up really early to do her laundry and go out and return goods to the stores. It just makes no sense, nor does it make sense that after being disappeared for a number of months, that she would return from far away in some cult to make purchases at local stores and be that close to her home and her two little beautiful daughters and never make an attempt to be seen or heard from by anybody that she knew.
Fear has no place in a place like home, and that's been Simply Safe's mission from day one. Simply Safe blankets your whole home with protection. Around-the-clock professional monitoring makes sure police are on the way when you need them. The security sensors are tiny, blending into your home so you won't notice them. The Verge calls Simply Safe the best home security, and it's a Wirecutter top pick. And more than 3 million Simply Safe customers already know it feels good to fear less. So protect your home today. You'll get free shipping on any order. Just visit simplysafe.com/realcrime. That's simplysafe.com/realcrime to protect your home and family today. simplysafe.com/realcrime. Did you know that 80% of New Year's resolutions fail by February? But even if your 2019 got off to a rocky start, each day brings a new opportunity to start again, to establish new habits that support your happiest, healthiest self. That's why we're excited to partner with Calm, the #1 app to help you sleep, meditate, and relax. If you head to calm.com/realcrime, you'll get 25% off a Calm premium subscription, which includes hundreds of hours of programs, including guided meditations on issues like anxiety, stress, and focus, including a brand new meditation each day called the Daily Calm. There's also sleep stories, which are bedtime stories for adults designed to help you relax before you doze off. Head to the lavender fields of France with Stephen Fry or explore New Zealand with Jerome Flynn from Game of Thrones. Bob Ross is even in there too. There's soothing music, breathing exercises, gentle stretches to relax your body, and much, much more. For a limited time, Real Crime Profile listeners get 25% off a Calm premium subscription at calm.com/realcrime. That's calm.com/realcrime. Get unlimited access to all of Calm's content today at calm.com/realcrime. Give yourself the gift of Calm and a happy and healthy 2019.
Mum was just absolutely devastated because, this was just, she didn't know what happened to her daughter.
If Lynn was going to go away, she would have told people. She certainly would have confided in her mother, at least.
One of our listeners said, well, you've got to remember that it's the summer for Australia, so it's January, isn't it? So she was saying, well, actually, probably people would have been up early to avoid the heat, but and would be commuting. But of course, this wasn't a commuting day. This was a Saturday morning.
Right, it was a weekend. Yeah.
It was a weekend. So whether it would still be as busy, but I think, like you said, Jim, if she were sozzled, would she really be up that early? Because
it would mean,
she wasn't an early riser.
Right. It would have meant she would have had to have gotten up at 5 a.m., right, and do laundry and then get this stuff ready and then have him drive her down to the bus station in order to be there around 7 a.m. So,
well, as the mom of two little ones, I mean, it's hard to say. She could have been up. They get up, you're up. It just depends. But
well, there are other questions to be asked because Headley doesn't think there was even a bus service at that time on a Saturday morning. So from DY to Chatswood, that's where he said that she was going. And the other thing that is interesting, and I basically just wanted to map it to see what Google Maps showed, is that if you use Bayview, which is obviously the home, and then the DY bus stop, and Chatswood Shopping Centre, where he claimed she was going, and then the Northbridge Baths, where he went to work for his part-time job, it actually makes no sense for him to do what he said, re-dropping her off at the bus stop and then returning to Bayview and then going back to the baths. Geographically speaking, it would make no sense for him to do that because Chatsworth Shopping Centre was on the way to Northbridge Baths.
Where were the kids?
Well, that's another good question. Where were the children at that time? I mean, he claimed that he would then take the children to the swimming baths, and that's where he met Helena.
So he wants us to believe that he left the kids home while he went to bring her to the bus and then went back to get the kids and then brought them to the baths?
I mean, it doesn't make much sense. Obviously, there's a hypothesis that perhaps he wanted to place himself there because he may well have been seen, and therefore he comes up with this clumsy attempt in terms of, you know, what he's saying.
Right.
But the map, certainly the geographical aspect doesn't make sense at all.
So he'd have to double back to go to Bayview and then go twice as far now than he would have to go if he just went from the bus station.
Yeah, and if she was going to Chatswood to return, it was a shopping centre, to return some clothing, why not just take her on the way? You know, drive to the baths, which would make sense. I mean, Lisa, you have a young family, so you're all about efficiency, you know, and with children, getting them to the place they need to get to. Why not just drop Lynn en route?
Yeah, exactly.
And then continue the 5.3 kilometres, you know, the 12 minutes extra to Northbridge swimming baths.
Yeah, that makes absolutely no sense. But something you said earlier, Lisa, just really struck me. You said, if the kids are up, you're up, right?
Mm-hmm.
Well, you're talking about a mother who cares about her kids, right?
Mm-hmm.
But that same mother who would be up would never just leave the kids alone. She would never just abandon them 100%, just not say a word to them, not leave them anything in terms of, you know, that love that she had for them that probably had her up early in the morning hundreds of times, right?
That's right. You just would not do that.
You absolutely would not do that. And damn, I wish the police officers had thought about that, had just put some time thinking about, this is a young mother of two very young children, two children that adored her, I'm sure, and that she was a part of every day of her life, and she was a part of every day of their lives.
Do you think that that's a effect of how little they think of women, or how much they think of Chris? I mean,
I think it's probably a combination of the two, and it's not necessarily how little they think of women, but it may be an indication of how little they understand about mothers.
Right.
Because you know, most mothers would lay down their lives for their children, and if she was in a situation that she felt her life was at risk, she would nevertheless endure it to protect her kids, or take her kids away from that, not leave her children with the enemy. You know, it's not the thing that a mother does, abandon her children in order to become free herself.
Well, you've got to remember how hard they tried for these children as well. I mean, they were going to go through the adoption process. They were desperate. Lynn was desperate to have these children.
Mm-hmm.
So it kind of flies in the face of that.
But they didn't do any investigation to know any of this information because, like Lisa, like you were just saying, because of how much they respected Chris, because Chris's word was gold to them, they didn't bother doing what would have revealed all this information.
Now admit it, sometimes Valentine's Day can get a little boring with all of the hearts and flowers and chocolate candy. You know, it's time to spice it up a little bit. And boy, with Man Crates, you sure can. Man Crates has gifts that are completely unique. Most gifts ship in a sealed wooden crate with a crowbar, and opening them is an experience that he will never forget. You can get unique gifts like the pizza grilling crate with pizza stones and two-sided dough roller that you and he will use all of the time. Or you can do Man Crate's take on the traditional Valentine by giving him a jerky heart, which is a heart-shaped box full of beef jerky, or my personal favorite, the salami bouquet. I mean, the name says it all. The jokes practically write themselves. But anyway, it will be an unforgettable Valentine's Day this year if you give your sweetie a Man Crate. Every Every Man Crates comes with a 100% satisfaction guarantee. Get him a Man Crate Plus, one of their meaty Valentine's gifts, and save. Just for Valentine's Day, get 14% off when you spend $100 or more at mancrates.com/realcrime. That's 14% off when you spend $100 or more at mancrates.com/realcrime. mancrates.com/realcrime.
It wasn't until 1997 that New South Wales Police launched a major investigation into Lynn's disappearance 15 years earlier.
And people didn't challenge the police at that time. You know, quite a few of our listeners did message as well, just to say at that time there was a lot of corruption in New South Wales Police. That, you know, in a police officer's word, you didn't challenge it, you didn't question it. And that's why Lynn's family didn't push them, because they felt if something really was untoward, then the police would let them know. So, you know, again, it was a, you know, can we say it was a different culture at that time? I'm not entirely sure. It's completely changed. But, you know, my view, Lisa, is that misogyny was at work here, the M word that no one really wants to talk about. And we've got to still remember that Chris was a celebrity at that time, you know, very good looking with his twin brother. They were models, you know, doing ads for Wrangler. And so, again, quite a few people have written in to remind us just of that, their status and their standing. And, of course, he was saying that she had contacted him, which, of course, everything that we read out in the antecedent report that Chris wrote, well, that's his version of events. But there is also Helena, Lynn's mother's statement, which she made 5 days later. And if, again, you know, Jim's saying that if police had just put those things together, or if an officer had looked at those two statements, if they had taken it seriously at all, they would have seen two contradicting accounts. But before we go into Helena's statement, because I think it would be useful for us to go through that, I wanted us just to go back to, you'll recall that Chris talks about in his antecedent report that he places an ad in the Daily Telegraph asking Lynn to call him. And we didn't really talk about that in detail at the time, but the ad was on March the 27th, 1982. So there had been a little bit of passage of time. And I think I mentioned what the ad said, but I'll read it to you. And then just the other two ads that sit around it are also quite interesting. So what he wrote was, Lynn, I love you. We all miss you. Please ring. We want you home, Chris.
One interesting thing, there's no last name, correct?
That's right.
There's no identification of who the we is. There's no listing her daughter's names, for example, right?
That's right.
I mean, so I think what's more important in this is not what's in it, because it is so sketchy. It's such a poor excuse for a real ad to try to bring somebody back home. But what isn't in it is much more instructive. In the fact that he doesn't even say her full name. Why is that? I mean, is this some coded communication?
How many thousands of Lynn's and Chris? There must be so many. I mean, how is she supposed to know that this is for her?
It just makes no sense.
I mean, there's more depth when you send flowers to somebody. And you know how they say, do you want a message on the card? I mean, this is what that sounds like. It doesn't sound like a call for help. It doesn't sound like a call for a desperation of any kind.
Right. Well, where it's placed is also very interesting, because it's sandwiched in the middle of two Lonely Heart ads.
Oh, really?
Yeah, which again is very bizarre, because let's say Lynn did take herself off. Is she really going to be scouring the Lonely Hearts ads of a local rag?
It makes no sense.
It's makes very no bizarre. Sense.
And is it only a local paper?
So, well, it says it's the Daily Telegraph. I'm not sure whether that is the same as the Telegraph in the UK, that it's a national the national paper.
Maybe one of our listeners can tell us.
Can let us know. But above it is lonely widow in her 60s would like to meet lonely widower, about 65 with car for outing, smokes and has a social drink. And so that's the above. And then below it is Meg, nearly 19, 5'1", has a great smile, is looking is a good-looking blonde with dark brown eyes. She's wanting a steady boyfriend, 20 to 31 years old, one who is genuine, one who enjoys live music, good movies, and sports.
So here's what happened. Chris read her ad and was interested in dating her and thought, well, here's where I'm going to put my, I mean, that's so ridiculous. Oh my God.
I mean, that's more plausible. But the other thing of saying we want you home, well, home to what? I mean, Joanne moved into her bed 2 days later and was wearing her clothes. So, and they're divorced within the year. So what really is he asking?
Right, but we have to remember, when you say 2 days later, and everybody reports that it was 2 days later, but 2 days after what? What day did she actually show up back? Was that the 11th?
So he went to, because she was on a camping trip.
Right.
And he went to pick her up.
Right, but he had to drive like 8 hours to get there and 8 hours back, right? That took a day. So if he got her back the second day after she was last seen alive, I mean, he really went the next day. So he must have, if he killed her, he must have gotten rid of the body and then immediately gotten in that car and driven up to get her replacement. It's just asinine to think that anybody is going to believe that you actually loved Lynn and missed her and wants her to return, because there would be hell to pay if Lynn came back to her home and found out that Joanne was sleeping in her bed with her husband. I mean, there's just no way that this is obviously a subterfuge. This is obviously a misdirection. This is obviously an attempt on the part of Chris to make it look like he had nothing to do with Lynn's disappearance. And that shows a guilty conscience, a guilty mind, and guilty intent. And that is actually another circumstantial nail in the coffin of Chris.
I mean, when we compare it also with Helena, Lynn's mother, well, she placed ads as well. She actually put an ad in the Manly Daily for a week, and she put 4 ads in the Central Coast paper, and also an ad on September 25th, Lynn's birthday, and did the Salvation Army. I mean, she continued trying to reach out to Lynn, where obviously this to me just felt like, it's my opinion, he's ticking a box that it's something that he should do. But of course, in the antecedent report, he doesn't contact any of her friends or any of the people that are much more viable of knowing probably where she is. But yet he places this ad for all to see. But it does look very peculiar. Its placement, what's missing, and the fact it's in the Lonely Hearts section, the context of where
so bizarre. Not like putting her picture anywhere or saying my wife is missing. Have you seen her? And by the way, in his antecedent report, does he mention putting this ad?
He does. I remember us talking about it.
Okay.
Yes.
Because it seemed very peculiar that he mentioned that. I think it was after he talked about, he didn't really name or specify which friends, where he says all girlfriends have been contacted, no success, but he doesn't name people. But then he was very specific about placing this ad in the Telegraph to appear on the 26th. And then he makes a whole thing about that.
Yeah, well, he's clearly left no turn unstoned in his search for his wife, if you know what I mean.
So Helena, Lynn's mother, actually wrote a statement, and this is the statement to the police on the 21st of August, 1982. So this is now 7 months after Lynn had disappeared. And the first part, she says, as requested, I'm forwarding a statement about the disappearance of my daughter, Lynette Joy Dawson. My daughter had become uptight and very tense over the latter months of last year. She and her husband had struck a bumpy patch in their marriage and partnership of 17 years, complicated by the taking in of a teenage student seeking help. She had babysat for them. My daughter offered her hospitality in good faith, in which she later regretted when she caused her so much anguish. So that's the start of it. And then she has various headings in there of day by day, which I think it would be useful to go through, but perhaps we should do that in our next episode, because there's actually quite a lot of detail in there. So on that note, if you do have information about Lynn Dawson's disappearance or the historical sexual offences at the Sydney high schools, please call Crime Stoppers on 1-800-333-000, and we'll include more information about coercive control and where you can get help in our show notes.
All right. Well, thank you for listening, and please listen to The Teacher's Pet, an amazing investigative podcast by Hedley Thomas and The Australian. We're going to do a bunch of episodes about this. Till next time, thank you for listening to Real Crime Profile.
If you like our podcasts, there are a few things you can do. You can take 2 minutes and go to Apple Podcasts and leave a 5-star review. You can also check out all Real Crime Profile offers and promotions and our sponsors in our show notes. Another thing you can do is go to Facebook and like our Facebook page, and you can also follow us on Twitter at Real Crime Profile without the E. And one last thing, please tell your friends, family and colleagues about us and spread the Real Crime Profile word. Thank you so much for listening. We really appreciate all of our listeners.
Real Crime Profile is produced and edited by Paul Francis Sullivan. Sound engineering by Mike Thal. Music is composed by Simba Tsumba. Logo art by Jim Clementi. Real Crime Profile is produced by XG Productions and distributed by Wondery.
For advice and support if you're experiencing stalking in the UK, you can contact Paladin National Stalking Advocacy Service on 0203 866 4107, or you can go to the website where there's a lot of information and advice that you can follow on www.paladinservice.co.uk. If you're experiencing domestic abuse, you can call the National Domestic Violence Helpline for free on 0800 2000 247. In the US, if you're experiencing domestic abuse and need advice, shelter or counselling, you can call Genesis, the 24-hour hotline, on 214-946-4357. You can also go to their website for further advice or support, www.genesisshelter.org. And there's the domestic violence hotline on 800-799-7233.